Easy. Lean in. Yeah, right there. Because whatever just happened, it wasn't an accident, and it damn sure wasn't supposed to be seen. Okay, Mother, let's call it what it is. You didn't expose them. Exposure is what amateurs do when they're angry. Exposure is loud, sloppy, desperate. What you did was colder, sharper. You turned a global secret into something that looked unstable, dangerous, alive. And now the people who built their power on silence are staring at each other like, who the hell let this happen? You felt that shift, didn't you? That microsecond when the room changed temperature, when the air got heavy, when smiles froze halfway. That's the moment they realized you weren't reacting. You were repositioning. You didn't scream. You didn't accuse. You didn't beg to be believed. You just moved something, one piece, one angle, and suddenly the whole structure started humming like a bomb, with the clock removed. Here's the part they don't understand about you, and it's eating them alive. You carry light and dark in the same hand. You can sound soft while delivering a sentence that rearranges destinies. You can look harmless while triggering contingency plans. You've mastered that terrifying paradox. Saint energy with psychopath precision, angelic presence, demonic timing. And when those two coexist in one person, systems don't know how to respond. They're built to neutralize extremes, not contradictions. They thought secrets were safe as long as everyone agreed to pretend. That's the oldest lie power tells itself. Because secrecy doesn't die when it's revealed. It dies when it becomes unpredictable. And you didn't reveal facts. You revealed vulnerability. You made the secret look nervous. You made it look like it could flinch. You made it look like it might run. Now watch how they move. Notice the sudden random rule changes, the subtle rewriting of narratives, the rushed alliances, the silence where confidence used to be. That's not strategy. That's panic disguised as protocol, because somewhere deep down, they know something's different about you. You don't attack the castle. You make the guards doubt the walls exist. You were forged in pain they couldn't survive. That's why your timing is so lethal. You learned patience the hard way, by being ignored, dismissed, underestimated, misdiagnosed, mislabeled. While they were perfecting optics, you were evolving perception. While they were protecting reputations, you were sharpening intuition. And now you see through layers most people don't even know are there. They keep asking the wrong question. They're asking what you know. They should be asking how you move, because knowledge can be erased, files can disappear, witnesses can fold, but a mind that knows how to destabilize reality without leaving fingerprints, that's a problem you can't threaten away. You don't leave evidence, you leave effects, and effects spread, effects infect. Effects make other people start noticing things they were trained not to see. You didn't just pull the curtain back. You made the audience realize the stage was shaking. You didn't point at the monster. You made the monster feel watched. And that's why they're spiraling. Power survives on the assumption that it is unseen. The second it feels observed by someone who isn't afraid, it starts leaking. And here's the sick part, the part that makes this almost poetic. You're not doing this from rage. You're doing it from clarity. There's no chaos in your movements, even when they look chaotic. That's why the alarms aren't working. They're trained to detect anger, not composure. They can handle rebels. They don't know what to do with someone who understands the game and refuses to play emotionally. You became dangerous the moment you stopped needing validation. The moment you realized you don't have to convince anyone, you just have to shift the frame. Once the frame changes, truth walks in by itself. And now, People are connecting dots they weren't supposed to see. Not because you told them to, but because you made it impossible not to. You feel that attention on you now, don't you? Not admiration, not hatred, something colder, something assessing. That's the gaze reserved for anomalies, for variables, for people who don't fit the model but keep producing outcomes. They're trying to decide whether you're a threat or a warning. Let them hesitate, because hesitation is where power bleeds out. You've already crossed the line they protect the hardest, the line between secrecy and fear. Once fear enters the equation, control starts slipping quietly, slowly, beautifully. And the funniest part, you're still standing there like nothing happened, like you didn't just turn a locked vault into a liability. Okay, Mother, remember this feeling. This is what it's like when the world realizes you're not loud. You're precise, not reckless, intentional, not dangerous because you attack, but because you understand. And now that the secret looks scared, there's no going back. Good. Stay right there. Don't rush past this part. This is where it gets uncomfortable for them and intoxicating for you. Because now the silence has weight, not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses on chests, the kind that makes people wake up at 3:17 a.m. and replay conversations they thought were harmless, the kind that turns "we're fine" into "who else knows." You didn't raise your voice, but the echo is global. You didn't chase them, yet they feel followed. That's mastery. They keep trying to profile you, you know. They want a label, a motive, a flaw they can exploit. Are you emotional, strategic, altruistic, vengeful? And every time they think they've got you pinned, you move in a way that violates the category. That's the real threat. You don't just break rules, you break models. And systems panic when their models fail. You've learned something most people never do. Unpredictability isn't chaos when it's conscious. When you control it, it becomes camouflage. It becomes leverage. It becomes the reason every plan they make has a footnote that says, "Unless she does something we can't anticipate." And that footnote, that's where fear lives. They thought your softness meant access. They thought your empathy meant transparency. They confused kindness with permission. Big mistake. Because what they didn't account for is that empathy sharpens perception. You feel patterns. You sense inconsistencies. You notice what people avoid saying. While they were busy performing authority, you were reading the subtext like a second language. You didn't stumble onto the truth. You recognized it. And when you spoke, when you finally let something slip into the open, it wasn't messy. It was surgical. You revealed just enough to destabilize the illusion without exposing yourself. That's why they can't retaliate cleanly. There's nothing to point at, no accusation to deny, no enemy to discredit. Just a growing sense that the floor isn't as solid as they promised. That's the paradox of you. You look like the calmest person in the room, but you're the reason the room is sweating. They're realizing something else now, too. Something that really messes with them. You didn't do this for power. You did it because you couldn't unsee. And people who act from awareness instead of ambition, those are the hardest ones to control. You're not climbing their ladder. You're questioning why the building exists. And here's where your past comes back in. Not as baggage, but as training. All those times you were forced to read the room to stay safe. All those moments you had to stay quiet, adapt, watch, wait. You thought that was survival. Turns out it was apprenticeship. Pain didn't break you. It calibrated you. It taught you timing. It taught you restraint. It taught you how to hold power without announcing it. That's why this feels different to them. You're not hungry, you're not desperate, you're not loud, you're already full. And someone who's full doesn't chase, they choose. Now watch how they start circling you indirectly. Third-party messages, subtle tests, fake concern, offers wrapped as favors. They want to see what makes you flinch, what makes you defensive, what makes you over-explain. And every time you don't take the bait, their anxiety spikes. Because the one thing they need from you is predictability, and you're starving them of it. You're not threatening them with exposure anymore. That phase is over. Now you're threatening them with possibility. The possibility that the story they told the world isn't airtight. The possibility that someone outside the inner circle understands the architecture. The possibility that others might start asking the wrong questions at the wrong time. And here's the cruel beauty of it. You don't have to push. Momentum is already doing the work. Once a secret starts to feel unsafe, people inside it start leaking without realizing it. Overcorrections, contradictions, defensive explanations no one asked for. You're watching it happen in real time, and you're not even touching the board. That's when they realize the most terrifying thing of all. You're not fighting them. You're letting them fight themselves. Okay, Mother, this is where you stay sharp, not aggressive, not smug, present, grounded, observant. You've crossed from ignored to uncomfortable. The next stage is unavoidable, and that transition doesn't require force. It requires composure. Let them underestimate your restraint. Let them mistake your calm for compliance. Because the truth is, you've already changed the temperature of the world they operate in. And once a system learns it can be watched, it never moves the same again. And here's the part they don't want to admit out loud. The part that keeps looping in their heads when the noise finally dies down. You didn't need them to collapse. You just needed them to notice you noticing. That's it. That single moment of mirrored awareness, that's when the balance tipped. Because power hates reflection. It prefers blind spots. And you turned yourself into a mirror they couldn't shatter without cutting themselves. They're replaying your tone now. Not your words, your tone. That measured calm, that almost affectionate certainty. The way you didn't sound angry or afraid or impressed. You sounded informed, as if what you were saying wasn't a revelation, but a confirmation, as if the truth had already settled in you long before it ever reached the surface. That's what unnerves them. Rage can be dismissed. Certainty can't. You've become the quiet proof that their control was always conditional, that it only worked as long as no one with emotional intelligence and pattern recognition stepped outside the script. And the moment you did, the script started glitching. People started hesitating mid-sentence. Protocols stopped aligning. Authority began second-guessing itself. Not because you attacked it, but because you stood outside of it without asking permission. You are the embodiment of a contradiction they were never trained to handle. You are warmth that doesn't submit, compassion that doesn't comply, intelligence that doesn't announce itself. You're not the rebel they prepared for. You're not the villain they can smear. You're the anomaly that makes everyone else look unstable by comparison. And deep down, they know this isn't a phase. This isn't a moment. This is who you are after the pain refined you. After betrayal stripped the naivety away. After silence taught you more than noise ever could. You didn't harden. You clarified. You didn't become cruel. You became precise. And precision is terrifying when it's paired with empathy, because it means you know exactly where it hurts, and exactly when not to touch it. they're starting to realize something else, too. You're not isolated. You never were. You're a signal, a frequency. People feel seen around you without knowing why. They start trusting their own perceptions again. They start questioning narratives they swallowed whole. That's the real danger. Not what you say, but what others start realizing in your presence. You don't recruit. You don't persuade. You activate. That's why the backlash is subtle. Why it comes dressed as concern, professionalism, just checking in. They don't want to fight. They want containment. They want you smaller, quieter, distracted, doubting yourself. They want you to second-guess that instinct that has never failed you. But here's the problem for them. You've already crossed the threshold where self-doubt lives. You know what you saw. You know what you felt. And you know the timing wasn't accidental. Once someone reaches that level of internal alignment, they stop being movable. Not stubborn, anchored. You're no longer reacting to pressure. You're observing it. You're no longer looking for cues. You are the cue. And everything that used to intimidate you now reads like choreography. So let them whisper, let them strategize, let them test the waters with half-truths and calculated silence. You're not in a hurry. You don't need closure. You don't need applause. You've already done the most irreversible thing possible. You've changed how they see you. And once you become someone a system can't predict, can't shame, can't rush, can't intimidate, you stop being a participant. You become a variable. And variables don't get erased. They get studied. Okay, Mother. Hold this posture. This quiet, lethal grace. This balance of softness and steel. This awareness that you don't need to burn the world down to make it nervous. You just need to stand exactly where you are, seeing clearly, unafraid to be seen back. Because the secret isn't just exposed now, it's alert. And now that it's alert, everything changes. An alert secret doesn't sleep. It twitches, it overreacts, it starts making noise it was never meant to make. You can hear it if you're quiet enough. The subtle scrambling, the rushed decisions disguised as confidence, the sudden urgency where patience used to live. That's not strength. That's a system trying to outrun its own shadow. You're standing in the eye of that storm, and the wild part. You didn't create the chaos. You revealed the fragility. There's a difference. Chaos is loud. Fragility is exposed when pressure meets truth. And you applied pressure with elegance, with timing, with restraint. You let the weight of reality do the crushing. They're trying to reassert dominance now. You'll notice it in small, almost petty ways. A shift in tone, a forced smile, an unnecessary flex. Authority loves theater when it feels insecure. It needs the performance to convince itself the power is still there. But you see through it. You always have. Your nervous system learned early how to detect danger behind politeness, how to read threat wrapped in charm, how to feel lies before they're spoken. That's why you're dangerous without being destructive. You don't need to prove anything. You recognize it. And recognition dissolves illusions faster than confrontation ever could. They're also realizing you're not alone in the way they hoped you were. Not because you have an army, but because you have resonance. People don't rally around you like soldiers. They align with you like compasses finding north. They leave conversations with you thinking clearer, standing straighter, remembering things they forgot about themselves. That's not influence you can sanction or silence. That's an internal recalibration. You've become a reference point. And here's where the paradox tightens. The more they watch you, the more exposed they become. Surveillance goes both ways when the observed is aware. Every move they make to contain you reveals another seam, another crack, another tell. You're collecting information without lifting a finger. You're mapping reactions, not events. Reactions never lie. You learned long ago that the loudest threat isn't the one that attacks. It's the one that waits and watches. That's the lesson pain drilled into you. You survived by noticing patterns others dismissed. You stayed alive by staying observant. So when this moment arrived, when the secret finally blinked, you didn't flinch. You recognized the opening, and you didn't rush it. Because rushing is what people do when they're afraid to lose the moment. You weren't afraid. You trusted the process. You trusted yourself. You trusted that once awareness is introduced, it can't be undone. You can't unsee the architecture. You can't unknow the weakness. You can't go back to believing the lie once you've touched the truth. They're hoping this fades, that attention drifts, that time dulls the edge. They're betting on distraction, the oldest tactic in the book. But distraction doesn't work on someone who's already integrated their shadow. You don't need constant stimulation. You don't need applause. You don't need resolution. You're comfortable in the unresolved, because that's where leverage lives. This is the phase where patience becomes a weapon, not the passive kind, the kind that listens, the kind that waits for the second move, the kind that understands that pressure doesn't always come from pushing. Sometimes it comes from not relieving it. You let the question hang. You let the silence stretch. You let them fill the void with mistakes. And they will. Because when a secret knows it's compromised, it starts cannibalizing itself. Loyalty fractures, trust thins. Everyone starts protecting their own angle. Coordination suffers. That's not something you cause. That's something you allow. You're simply present while it happens. Okay, mother. Feel the control in that. Not dominance, not ego. Control born from self-mastery. From knowing you don't need to win loudly to win permanently. From understanding that the most irreversible shifts happen quietly under the surface while everyone else is arguing about optics. You didn't just make a global secret look dangerous. You reminded it what fear feels like. And once fear enters the bloodstream of power, it never quite recovers. And that's where this ends. Not with an explosion, not with applause, not with some dramatic collapse they can point to and explain away. It ends in something far worse for them: permanent awareness. Because from this moment on, the secret knows it can be seen. Not by a mob, not by a headline, by you. And that kind of witness doesn't blink, doesn't forget, doesn't need to shout. It just exists, watching, remembering, adjusting. They'll try to move on like nothing happened. They'll act bored, dismissive, casual. They'll pretend this was a misunderstanding, a coincidence, a blip. But underneath that performance, the internal recalibration has already begun. Every future decision now carries an extra question they never had to ask before. Is she watching this? And that question alone will slow them down, make them hesitate, make them fracture. You didn't seize power. You infected certainty. That's the difference between conquerors and architects. Conquerors need constant motion to maintain control. Architects change one structural assumption and let gravity do the rest. You didn't knock on the door. You altered the foundation beneath it. And now the entire structure has to pretend it isn't leaning. Here's the final truth they'll never say out loud. You weren't supposed to make it this far with your awareness intact. The pain was supposed to dull you. The betrayal was supposed to confuse you. The silence was supposed to erase you. Instead, it refined you. It stripped away the unnecessary. It sharpened your perception until you could see the seams in things people swore were solid. You became calm where others became cruel, focused where others became reactive, grounded where others lost themselves. That's why you're terrifying in a way violence never could be. You don't need chaos to move things. You stabilize truth until lies start wobbling on their own. And now, you don't chase outcomes. You don't demand justice. You don't announce intentions. You simply continue living from that aligned, unshakable center where intuition and intellect move as one, where light and dark are no longer enemies, but tools, where you don't need permission to see clearly. Let them scramble, let them whisper, let them overcorrect. You're not here to destroy the world. You're here to remind it that nothing stays hidden forever once someone with courage, patience, and precision decides to look straight at it. Okay, Mother. Walk away knowing this. You didn't just expose them. You didn't just unsettle them. You didn't just make a global secret look dangerous. You made it aware. And awareness is the one thing power can never undo. Hold still for a second. Yeah, right there. Because this moment, this is the silence before they admit something they swore they never would. You feel it, don't you? That shift. That weight in the air when you walk in now. The way conversations slow down. The way eyes linger half a second longer than they're supposed to. That's not curiosity. That's respect. Raw, unfiltered, unwilling respect. And here's the part that messes with their heads the most. It didn't come from applause. It didn't come from approval. It came from survival. They don't like you. They don't agree with you. Hell, some of them still wake up hoping you fail. But none of them can deny you anymore. And that's eating them alive. Because respect hits different when it's forced. See, anyone can get love when they play clean, predictable, soft around the edges. But you walked straight through contradiction, saint and psychopath, in the same breath. Calm hands, dangerous mind, mercy in your eyes, violence in your discipline. You didn't choose a side. You became the paradox. They tried to label you once, tried to put you in a box they could manage. But every time they thought they understood you, you did something that shattered the file they built. Unpredictable, but not chaotic. Silent, but never absent. Controlled, but never harmless. That's when the tone changed. Because respect doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being undeniable. You didn't argue your worth. You didn't beg for a seat at the table. You let time, pressure, and precision do the talking. And now, even the ones who once plotted against you have to sit there, jaw tight, ego bruised, nodding in silence like, yeah, I see it. That's a dangerous kind of win. You know why this respect feels heavier than praise? Because it's built on fear they'll never admit out loud. Not fear of what you'll say. Fear of what you won't say. Fear of what you're capable of when you stop explaining yourself. They watched you take hits that would have broken them. Watched you lose things you never complained about. Watched you bleed without asking for witnesses. And instead of becoming bitter, you became sharper, quieter, colder in the right ways. That's when they realized, oh, this one doesn't need chaos to be dangerous. This one is the system. You didn't evolve in the light. You evolved where nobody was clapping, where pain was routine, where doubt tried to rot you from the inside out. And instead of collapsing, you adapted. Pain became data. Betrayal became strategy. Loneliness became focus. That's not normal growth. That's weaponized transformation. Now look at them. The same mouths that dismissed you, tight. The same eyes that overlooked you, calculating. They're measuring their words around you now. watching how they move, second-guessing their assumptions. Because deep down, they know something terrifying. You didn't win by accident. You won because you understood something they never will. That unpredictability isn't chaos when it's mastered. It's leverage. You can be warm and lethal, patient and ruthless, forgiving and unforgettable. You can let things slide or end them without raising your voice. And the fact they can't tell which version they'll get, that's what keeps them respectful. This is the kind of respect that doesn't come with smiles. It comes with distance, with careful language, with that subtle energy of, don't underestimate them again. You've crossed that line now, the one most people never reach, where enemies stop trying to beat you and start trying to understand you. That's when the power shifts, because admiration can fade, but forced respect, that sticks. They see it now. They feel it every time your name comes up and the room goes quiet. Every time someone says, yeah, I don't agree with them, but that but is everything. It means you've become real to them, too real to ignore, too proven to dismiss. You didn't become this by being pure. You became this by integrating your darkness instead of letting it own you. Angel who learned how demons think. Villain who chose restraint. That balance, that's rare. That's why it scares them. So stand there, say nothing. Let them wrestle with the truth they avoided for years. The respect is real now, not because they like you, not because they approve, but because deep down, they know, whatever you are, you're not someone they can afford to doubt ever again. And here's the part they don't talk about, the part that keeps them awake when the noise dies down. Respect didn't arrive for you like a celebration. It arrived like a verdict, quiet, heavy, final. They didn't clap, they recalibrated, because once people like them realize you're real, they don't cheer. You change their math. They start asking different questions. Not who does he think he is, but what does he see that we missed? Not can we stop him, but what happens if we provoke the wrong version? That's when the room temperature drops. You've noticed it. That subtle stiffness when you speak. That careful politeness from people who used to be casual. They're not being respectful because they're kind. They're being respectful because they're aware. Aware that you don't move emotionally anymore. You move precisely. Aware that you don't react. You respond when it matters. Aware that you don't need validation because you already passed the test that broke them. And that awareness, it terrifies insecure minds. See, most people only understand power when it's loud, shouting, posturing, overcompensating. But your power, it's controlled, compressed, stored, like a weapon with the safety on, not because it's harmless, but because you decide when things escalate. They saw you walk through fire without announcing it, saw you lose things you loved without turning bitter, saw you get underestimated and never rush to correct it. And at some point, something clicked in their heads. Oh, this one doesn't need approval to advance. That's when denial dies, because here's the truth they hate admitting. You didn't become dangerous by becoming cruel. You became dangerous by becoming clear. Clear about who you are. Clear about what you tolerate. Clear about what you're willing to walk away from, even if it costs you everything. That clarity, that's dominance disguised as calm. You don't threaten. You don't explain yourself anymore. You don't chase the narrative. You let results do the damage. And now even the ones who once stood against you feel it in their bones. That arguing with you won't work. That undermining you won't land. That trying to bait you only exposes them. So they choose something else. Distance. Respectful distance. Because they can't read you like they read others. They can't predict your next move, because you don't move from ego. You move from intent. You don't lash out when disrespected. You file it away. You observe. You wait. That's the kind of patience that rewires power dynamics. You didn't just evolve. You outgrew the game while still mastering it. That's why your presence feels different now. It's not aggressive. It's decisive. When you speak, people listen. Not because you demand it, but because they sense there's weight behind every word. When you stay silent, it's louder than most people yelling. And when you leave a room, something always feels unfinished. Like they missed a chance they won't get back. That's respect forged under pressure. And the ones who opposed you, they're stuck with a brutal realization. You didn't beat them by becoming louder than them. You beat them by becoming unavoidable. They can't discredit you without exposing themselves. They can't challenge you without risking humiliation. They can't ignore you because your absence still affects outcomes. So they do the only thing left. They acknowledge you carefully. And you know what makes this even darker? You're not done. They respect who you are now, but they fear who you're still becoming. Because they can see it, the restraint, the discipline, the unfinished edge. They know you haven't even used everything you learned in the dark. You integrated it, you refined it, you locked it behind self-control. Angel who learned how to survive hell. Demon who learned restraint. That balance isn't taught. It's earned through suffering most people would never endure. So let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them adjust their behavior around you like gravity shifted. You don't need to remind them. They already know. The respect is real now, not because you demanded it, but because they finally understand one simple, irreversible truth. Whatever path you're on, standing in your way is no longer an option. And that's the part they can't escape. The irreversibility of it. Respect, once forced into existence, doesn't go back into hiding. They can pretend, they can posture, they can act casual. But the nervous system doesn't lie. Their bodies react to you before their mouths do. You see it in the micro-hesitation before they speak, the way jokes soften around you, the way criticism turns diplomatic, the way your name changes tone depending on who's listening. That's not politics, that's instinct. Because at some point they realize something that can't be unseen. You don't need momentum anymore. You are momentum. You don't chase outcomes. You bend probabilities. You don't force doors. You wait until they swing open on their own. And when they do, it looks effortless to the outside, which only deepens the fear. They tell themselves stories to cope. Lucky, timing, right place, right moment. But the ones who really watched you know better. They saw the nights where nothing made sense. The seasons where you were invisible. The stretch of time where every signal said, stop. And you kept refining. They saw you lose, adjust, recalibrate, without collapsing, without begging, without changing your core. That's not luck. That's discipline, forged in isolation. And isolation does something to a mind like yours. It sharpens it. It strips away noise. It kills dependency. It teaches you how to sit with discomfort until discomfort becomes irrelevant. Most people avoid that phase at all costs. You lived there. That's why now, when pressure shows up, you don't flinch. You don't rush. You don't need to dominate the room. You let the room come to you. And when it does, the hierarchy silently rearranges itself. People like to believe respect is a social contract. It's not. It's a biological response to competence mixed with restraint. You have both. They sense that you could escalate, but choose not to. That you could expose, but stay quiet. That you could dismantle, but prefer precision. That choice is what unsettles them. Because uncontrolled aggression is easy to predict. Controlled power. That's a nightmare for anyone trying to outmaneuver you. You're not reactive anymore. You're selective. You don't correct disrespect immediately. You let patterns reveal themselves. You let people show you exactly who they are when they think you're not paying attention. And then, when you act, it's clean, decisive, final, no drama, no explanation, just consequences. That's why even the ones who dislike you speak about you carefully now. They don't want to trigger something they don't understand. They don't want to miscalculate your silence. Because silence in your hands stopped being weakness a long time ago. It became camouflage. You learned when to disappear, when to observe, when to let others overplay their hand while you stayed unreadable. That's not kindness. That's mastery. And mastery doesn't need applause. It commands respect by existing. They know you're not chasing dominance, which is exactly why you have it. You don't need to win every exchange. You let people win battles that don't matter, so they don't see the war they're already losing. That's the saint-psychopath paradox they can't resolve. You have empathy, but it doesn't weaken you. You have darkness, but it doesn't control you. You have restraint, but it doesn't make you passive. You integrated all of it, and that integration, that's what separates you from pretenders. Now understand this, because this is important. Respect isn't the end state, it's a checkpoint. They respect you now because they've accepted you're not leaving. But what really unsettles them is what comes next. Growth didn't slow you down, it accelerated you. Pain didn't distort you, it clarified you. Opposition didn't stop you, it refined your strategy. So when they look at you, they're not just seeing who you are, they're calculating who you're becoming. And that future version, that's the one they're adjusting for. That's why doors open quicker now. Why resistance feels thinner. Why obstacles seem less committed. The environment adapts when a force proves consistent. You didn't demand respect. You made disrespect impractical. So let them sit with it. Let them reconcile their old opinions with present reality. Let them feel that quiet pressure every time they cross paths with you. You don't need to remind them. They already know. The respect is real now. And the most dangerous part, you earned it without ever needing their permission. And here's the truth hiding underneath all of it. The layer they feel but can't articulate. Respect didn't just change how they treat you. It changed how they see themselves around you. That's why it's uncomfortable. Because your presence forces comparison, and comparison exposes weakness. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, internally. They measure their discipline against yours, their patience against yours, their courage against the way you kept moving when nothing guaranteed it would work out. And most of the time, they come up short. That's not your fault. That's just reality catching up. You didn't become intimidating by flexing power. You became intimidating by not needing to. They see how little you react to chaos now, how drama slides off you like it's beneath your notice, how you don't rush to defend your name, your choices, your trajectory, because you already tested yourself in ways their opinions can't touch. You've been alone with your thoughts when no one was watching. You've confronted doubt without outsourcing reassurance. You've faced the version of yourself that could have quit and didn't. That kind of internal victory changes how you carry yourself. It alters your posture, your timing, your tone. It turns you into someone who doesn't move to prove. only to execute. And that's when respect stops being optional. They can sense that you don't need them aligned with you to keep winning. You're not fueled by validation. You're powered by alignment with your own code. That's rare. And rarity commands distance and deference. Look at how people talk around you now. Less careless, more deliberate. They choose words like tools instead of toys, because they know you hear everything. Even when you say nothing, they know you don't miss patterns. You don't miss inconsistencies. You don't miss shifts in loyalty or tone. And the scariest part for them? You don't call it out immediately. You let it play. You let people reveal themselves fully before you decide what access they deserve. That patience isn't kindness. It's strategy. You've learned something most never do. Immediate reaction gives away leverage. Delayed response multiplies it. That's why your silence carries weight now. That's why people fill it with assumptions, worries, self-corrections. Your quiet forces them to confront themselves. And even your opposition knows it. They don't hate you the way they used to. Hate requires certainty. What they feel now is hesitation. They're unsure which version of you they're dealing with. The composed one, the forgiving one, the decisive one, or the version that simply removes people from relevance without warning. That ambiguity keeps them respectful, because you've proven something undeniable. You don't need to win loudly to win permanently. You let others underestimate you once, maybe even twice, but never long enough to make it a habit. Now the lesson is learned. They watched you absorb pressure that cracked others, watched you stay composed when chaos begged for reaction, watched you walk away from ego traps without needing the last word, and slowly, without ceremony, the hierarchy adjusted. Not because you demanded it, but because reality enforced it. You don't posture, you don't threaten, you don't over-explain. You simply exist at a frequency they can't fake. That's why respect clings to you now, even from people who don't want to give it. And understand this clearly. This is the most dangerous phase, because respect isn't fear, but it's the doorway to it. Not fear of violence, fear of irrelevance, fear of being outpaced, fear of misjudging you again. They know you're no longer predictable by past versions of yourself. You adapt faster than they update their assumptions. That makes you untouchable in a way they can't attack directly. So they adjust. They soften their edges. They watch before they speak. They choose diplomacy over dismissal. Because deep down, they've accepted something they once resisted. You're not a phase. You're not a fluke. You're not a moment. You're a force that learned restraint, and forces with restraint reshape environments without announcing it. So let the respect sit heavy in the room. Let it stay unspoken. Let it make people uncomfortable. You didn't come this far to be liked. You came this far to be undeniable. And now, even the ones who stand against you know the truth they'll never say out loud. You're not someone they can afford to underestimate ever again. And that's where it settles, not in applause, not in praise, but in that quiet adjustment everyone makes when they finally accept reality. You don't have to announce yourself anymore. Your presence already did the talking. Your history already testified. Your restraint already proved the depth of your control. They know now. You're not dangerous because you're loud. You're dangerous because you're finished explaining, finished reacting, finished chasing acknowledgement, finished proving what pain already forged into you. Respect didn't arrive because you softened. It arrived because you survived without breaking, evolved without losing your core, and learned when to stay silent instead of spilling your power everywhere. Even the ones against you feel it. They might resist it emotionally, but they obey it behaviorally. They adjust, they pause, They choose their words. That's how you know it's real. So don't perform. Don't celebrate. Just move forward the way you always have. Deliberate, unreadable, grounded. Let them watch. Let them calculate. Let them wonder. You already crossed the line. They're still trying to understand. The respect is real now. And the most powerful part? You earned it by becoming someone who never needs to ask for it again.